Check this out. Beast Simulator here, bringing you another Commander Deck Tech. Today we're looking at Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. This is a mono black all-in aristocrats deck. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of fun stuff. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the aristocrats strategy, what that means is we're going to be generating a lot of creatures that we're going to sacrifice and get a whole bunch of different value, such as getting life, drawing cards, forcing our opponents to sacrifice creatures, stuff like that. So let's get right into it. First up, let's get into the artifacts. The artifacts and what we're going to be attempting to do is produce as much mana as possible to do very big, stupid, dumb things. So, of course, we have Soul Ring. We have Mana Vault. Wish that was Mana Crypt, but, you know, reasons. Our Arcane Signet. Our Jet Medallion. This is a cost reduction for all our black spells. Now we have both altars that we're going to use to sacrifice creatures to produce mana. So we have Ashnod's altar. This will give us 2 colorless for each creature we sacrifice to it. Now we have Phyrexian altar. This will add 1 mana of any color, specifically black. Now we have Extra Planar Lens. This is specifically here because every single basic land that we're running are snow covered. So we're going to imprint one of those snow covered swamps to Extra Planar Lens, and every single basic will tap for 2 mana. Now we have Genesis Chamber. This is going to synergize with a couple sacrifice combos that we have going, and we're going to focus primarily on creatures that have the Undying mechanic. So now we have Skull Clamp. That way we can continually draw cards. And we're going to have a lot of different effects of creatures going to the graveyard or entering the battlefield. So we have Altar of the Brood. That way we can mill our opponents out. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. We're going to use our life total as a resource. So we have Necropotence. That way we can pretty much put as many cards in our hand as possible. Now we have Funeral Room / Awakening Hall. This is a newer card from Duskmourn. And what this actually does is it's actually a modal spell. So you can choose whichever door you want first just by paying that door's cost. And you can play the other side. So with Funeral Room, whenever a creature we control goes to the graveyard, each opponent will lose a life and we gain a life. This is going to be the primary room that we're going to use, but Awakening Hall is very powerful as well. When we unlock Awakening Hall, we return all creatures from our graveyard back to the battlefield for 8 mana. Now we have a fun one with Gate to Phyrexia. We're going to sacrifice a creature every single upkeep, and if we do, we can destroy any artifact we want. Now we have Carnival of Souls. This is going to trigger every single time a creature enters the battlefield, whether we control it or not. We're going to lose a life and add 1 black mana. So we're going to generate a lot of mana. Now we have Nest of Scarabs. This is going to synergize very well with Yawgmoth because we're putting -1 counters on creatures, and every time we do that, we're going to get another token that we can use. Now we have Grave Pact. I love Grave Pact. This is going to control all our opponent's creatures whenever any creature we control goes to the graveyard. Similar to that, we have Dictate of Erebos. This is a flash version of Grave Pact. Now we have Blight Mound. This is going to synergize whenever any non-token creature goes to the graveyard. We're going to create a 1/1 black pest, and when that token goes to the graveyard, we get to gain a life. Now we have Bastion of Remembrance. Just when this enters the battlefield, it's going to give us a token, but whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent is going to lose a life and we're going to gain a life. There are many aspects of whenever a creature goes to the graveyard or enters. Okay, let's get into the instance. First up is Entomb. That way we can put a very specific card that we need in our graveyard whenever we want. Now we have Dark Ritual and Cabal Ritual. This is going to produce a lot of black mana. That way we can cast stuff very quickly. Now we have Vampiric Tutor. That way we can go get a very specific card that we need to combo off and win. And if we have very large creatures in our graveyard already, we have Goryo's Vengeance. Most of these very large creatures that we're going to be reanimating are going to synergize with everything we're doing, and most of those creatures are going to be legendary. Now we have Shallow Grave. This is going to reanimate a creature very fast. Okay. Now we have some removal with Flare of Malice. This does have a alternate cost where we sacrifice a non-token black creature rather than paying its mana cost. But when we do, each opponent will sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among any creatures or planeswalkers they control. Now we have Withering Torment. This is going to deal with enchantments, because enchantments are very difficult to deal with in black, and this is a very powerful card. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. Most of these are going to be removal spells or some kind of tutor effect. So we have Imperial Seal, Demonic Tutor. Okay, now we have Diabolic Intent. This is a demonic tutor that has an additional cost of sacrificing a creature. So we're going to trigger more stuff going to the graveyard while going and getting whatever card we want. Similar to that, we have Beseech the Mirror. You can cast this for 4, or you can cast it for its bargain cost, which is a additional cost of sacrificing a artifact, enchantment, or token to go demonic tutor. And if you paid the bargain cost, you get to cast that spell that you search for that was mana value 4 or less. Now we have Buried Alive. This is going to go get 3 very important combo creature cards and put them directly into the graveyard. And of course, we have the best reanimation spell with Reanimate. Now we have what's called a MDFC, where this is a spell, but it's also a land as well. But this is a X spell that's going to return any number of target creatures that have different mana costs with X or less. Now we have Lively Dirge. This is kind of like a modal spell. So you can cast it just for 2 mana. If you pay its spree cost, you can search your library for a card and put that card into your graveyard. So it's kind of like another Entomb. Or you can spree for 2 colorless and return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefields. Of course, we're playing Toxic Deluge. We have Damnation, which is the Black Wrath of God, to deal with even more enchantments, such as Rest in Peace. We have Feed the Swarm. And a top-end finisher, because we're going to be producing a lot of mana, and we'll actually have access to produce infinite mana. We have Torment of Hailfire. I love this card. Okay, let's get into the creatures. First up is Master of Dark Rites. This is a sacrifice outlet, and when we do, we're going to add 3 black mana, but we can only use this mana to cast vampire, cleric, or demon spells. Luckily, all of our bigger spells are those 3 types. Now we have Hex Parasite. Hex Parasite is going to help us tremendously in removing counters from the undying creatures. That way we can continually do this loop. Now we have Cryptghast. Apart from having Extort, which is going to gain us life, and our opponents are going to lose life with every single spell that we cast, whenever we tap a swamp for mana, it's going to add a additional black mana. And because we're focused on putting minus counters, we have Maha, it's Feathers Knight. This is a very powerful card. It's a flying 6/5 trampler with ward, so your opponents have to discard a card just to target this creature, but it has a static effect of where every single creature your opponents control is going to have a base toughness of 1. With Yawgmoth, we can keep putting these minus counters on your opponent's creatures, and it doesn't matter how big those creatures are, they're going to go to the graveyard. And because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, we have Sheoldred the Apocalypse. And because many things are going to be going to the graveyard, we have Sir Conrad. Now we have good old Gary, or Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is going to drain our opponent's life total very quickly because our devotion to black is going to be very high. Now we have Ophiomancer. This is going to be responsible for creating sacrifice fodder every single upkeep. And those snake tokens will actually block very well because they have Death Touch. Now we have a bunch of creatures that are going to synergize with everything going to the graveyard or entering the battlefield. So we have Ayara, First of Locthwain. Whenever Ayara or another black creature enters the battlefield, each opponent is going to lose a life and we're going to gain a life. And we can sacrifice another black creature, and when we do, we get to draw a card. Now we have Mirkwood Bats. Whenever we create or sacrifice a token, each opponent is going to lose a life. Now we have Pitiless Plunderer. This is a major part in the sacrifice infinite combo that we're going to use. But whenever another creature we control goes to the graveyard, we're going to get a treasure token. And because a whole bunch of stuff is going to die, we have Zulaport Cutthroat and Blood Artist. They both do the same thing. Our opponents are going to lose life and we're going to gain life. And even more so, we have Death Greeter. Whenever any creature goes to the graveyard, we get to gain a life. Okay, let's get into that combo. The major combo enabler is going to be Mikaeus the Unhallowed. Other non-humans are going to get +1/+1 and have Undying. Undying is the mechanic that we're going to use to create this infinite sacrifice loop. And Mikaeus the Unhallowed is going to give this ability to every single non-human creature. But the main enabler is going to be Geralf's Messenger, because when Geralf's Messenger enters the battlefield, target opponent will lose 2 life. Another one, we have Hancock, Ghoulish Mayor. He's going to give each other creature we control that's a zombie or mutant +X+X, but we're not going to worry too much about that. This is just another low costing creature that has Undying. Similar to that, we have Butcher Ghoul, Nether Trader. Nether Trader will keep entering the battlefield from our graveyard just by paying 1 black mana. Similar to that, we have Reassembling Skeleton. And now we have Pawn of Ulamog. Whenever Pawn or another non-token creature goes to the graveyard, we're going to create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn with sacrifice that token, add 1 colorless mana. This is the main combo piece. So now we have Phyrexian Walker. This is a 0-cost 0/3 artifact creature that we're going to constantly sacrifice and keep bringing back. And once we've produced infinite mana, we have Walking Ballista. We're going to put infinite counters on Walking Ballista and kill our opponents that way. Now we have 3 very large creatures that are demons that we can go get. So we have Vile Mutilator. But as a additional cost to cast, we have to sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Chances are we're just going to sacrifice a token. But whenever Vile Mutilator enters the battlefield, each opponent is going to sacrifice a non-token enchantment, then a non-token creature. Now we have Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. This is a very large demon, but all we have to do is pay 2 life, sacrifice another creature, and we can go Demonic Tutor. Now we have Villas, Broker of Blood. We can pay a black, pay 2 life, and target creature will get -1/-1. But whenever we lose life, we draw that many cards. And because we're paying life to draw cards, if we have Shieldred, we're actually going to gain a additional life. So it's going to counteract this effect. Okay, let's get into the land base. First up is Cavern of Souls, because Yawgmoth is probably the most important card. So making Yawgmoth uncounterable just by naming the human creature type is going to be very beneficial for us. And to ensure everything is a swamp, we have Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. It's very flavorful as well. And because every land is going to be a swamp, we have Cabal Coffers. We're going to pay 2 colorless, and we're going to add 1 black mana for each swamp we control. So we're going to be producing a lot of black mana. Now we have Phyrexian Tower. This has a built-in sacrifice outlet as well. But when we do, we're going to add 2 black mana. Now we have Barad-dûr. I love this land. Chances are some creature will go to the graveyard sometime during that turn. And when it does, we can keep creating more sacrifice fodder just with this land alone. Now to produce even more black mana, we have Lake of the Dead. When Lake of the Dead enters the battlefield, we do have to sacrifice a swamp, but that's a very low trade for sacrificing a swamp to add 4 black mana. Okay, now we're going to produce even more mana with Crypt of Agadeem. This is similar to Cabal Coffers, except this will add a black mana for each black creature in our graveyard. Now we have some fetch lands. We have Prismatic Vista and Fable Passage. And because we're going to have a lot of devotion, we have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. Now we have Urza Saga. This is going to generate a token for us, but also it's going to go get one of those very important combo pieces, such as Altar of the Brood, or if you really need a Soul Ring, you can go get that. Now we have Gemstone Caverns. This is going to be very important for getting you ahead on mana. Now we have Ancient Tomb. This will produce 2 colorless mana. Now we have Myron the Moaning Well. This is going to gain us a lot of life if the creature we sacrifice to it has a very large toughness. And because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, we have Reliquary Tower. And we are running 20 snow-covered swamps. And that was the Commander Deck Tech for Yawgmoth Thran Physician. I really hope you guys enjoyed this mono black aristocrats version of Yawgmoth. If you guys have any suggestions, please put those in the comments below. I'll have a link to the Mox field for the entire deck list. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, share these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.